for sustainability. So with that, and without much further ado, we would like to start the AI Edge. You know, as we're about to start, I want to make a few interesting observations. Some time ago, not very long ago, um, the banking penetration in India was quite low. It was about 17%. But in about 6 to 7 years, we were able to, with the three things which often was quoted a lot in the elections and everywhere else, Jan Dhan accounts and so on, we reached to almost 80+% of banking penetration in India. And as that happened, of course, everybody said, okay, so what? We have Aadhaar cards as ID, we have banking penetration, what's the big deal? And then UPI came around. And when UPI came, everybody said, who is going to use it? Hardly anybody will use it. In fact, there was a meeting between some top level people. I don't want to say the names. If some of you is interested during drinks, I will tell you who was in the meeting. But most of them said, we have 25 million digital customers who use net banking. It may grow 5%, that's it. And so they said, we will stay out of this UPI stuff. So somebody stayed out. Who that is, you can find out later, but that is homework. And then somebody else also said, no, we have our own app and everything happens through that. We'll also stay out of that. So they stayed out of that. And in the end, there was a small startup in Bangalore, which used to be called PhonePe, now is acquired by Walmart. But this guy said, oh, we have nothing to lose, let's jump in. And then rest is history. Today, PhonePe is the leader. I don't know, last count, I think 8 billion transactions per month. There's this huge data of transactions. So it's really interesting or to see this growth from the digital, side of things. And as the moderator, I also thought it's good to give the context. Somehow we don't have two more speakers, and so that we have little extra time. So I thought I will add that extra perspective. Because from the two forums that I run, the India Advantage Summit and the Future ICT Forum, we were lucky to have Nandan as a keynote speaker and some insight. So one of the things that we say very strongly, it's India's decade. The next 10 years, we will see the most growth. And those who stayed back, right? You should get some value because you stayed a little longer. So I want to give you a small story and let that run in your mind as we then start the panel. The story is this. We all see the person who is selling fruits and vegetables on the road, right? You've seen them pushing the carts. Interestingly, they have a QR code on their, on their cart to pay. And somebody sometime back replaced it with a Bluetooth speaker. So when you pay, there's a, somebody screaming and saying in Amitabh Bachchan's voice sometime. I find it weird, but anyway, 50 rupees received on PhonePe. And of course, so far so good. Interesting. But in the past, when we would pay cash, the lady knows we paid cash, we know we paid cash, nobody else, knows. But with this Bluetooth speaker and with that app, there's a digital record, dual digitally certified record, both sides. And this record and this data is building a credit history for that lady on the street. And it's very, very possible that a credit history of 18 months, 24 months, 36 months is good enough for an AI model to look at that data and say, this lady is hardworking, she starts at 7 in the morning, her first sale is at 7:05, her last sale is at 9 p.m. So, without taking collateral, looking at her cash flow, we can give her debt. So today, most of these people, whether it's an auto driver in Bangalore, who now is using Nammayatri, there is no commission there, but they pay a subscription, which is very interesting. If any of you hasn't seen the Nammayatri dashboard, you go to the website nammayatri.in, you will find that dashboard. You can see the map of Bangalore and you can see how many autos are going from where to where at what time. Lot of this data, because it's using a protocol, will help people. So given this context of data being available, data creating credit scores, data helping banks deploy capital, and capitalism fundamentally is capital deploying to the right person creates the right value. And normally in capitalism, you see trickle down, which is money coming from up. In India, for the first time, we will see money going down or going up from down, because the capital was deployed to the hardworking person at the right time. So that's the context I wanted to set, and because we have two speakers less, I took the honor of using that time to give some additional value. Those of you who think this is going to define the future decade and decade of India should catch up with some of the speakers, during the closing drinks and get together. Maybe you get more insights. So as I am about to start, our idea is to cover three parts. One is India's AI landscape, and compared to global AI landscape, what's different, what's better, what's worse, that's one. And then in AI innovation strategies, is there a possibility to collaborate between ecosystems, between startups and large companies, between large companies and startups? So we have some interesting insights from our speakers. And then finally, to drive innovation, you see the event is called IGIC. Innovation is the key word right in the middle. And to drive innovation, what can AI bring to the table and how AI can be leveraged? So this is the three aspects that we will cover in today's panel. So what I would do is, let me first start with Francois Rousseau. You have been with iSpirit. iSpirit is like the NASSCOM for product companies, and you also are working with the UN, to take India's digital infrastructure story and position it in the right way. So can you just unlock some of that? Explain a little bit what you also do at UN, at iSpirit, plus bring an introductory angle to the AI aspect of what you do. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, José Jacob. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I would like, as far as AI Championship and India are concerned together, to come back to two or three very simple ideas that will be my modest contribution. That's because I'm rather new in India, so I'm still learning. I'm a full professor. I'm French, this you already noticed from my accent. And I'm dealing with AI and machine learning from almost 40 years, which is a long time. I've been involved AI in many different fields. I have a list here, but I will shorten it. There is an echo, disagreeable echo, no? Is it possible to cancel it? So I worked in air traffic control, crisis management, music, browsing and retrieval, choreographic creation and dance, smart cities, smart agriculture, smart industry, territorial intelligence, privacy, right management, ecosystem discovery. AI has evolved a lot during those 40 years, but I've learned something very important. Most AI applications are linked to human and social environment and rely on human and social sciences, applying in the so-called digital humanities, which is very important. AI is not a kind of autonomous techniques, even if now I'm perfectly aware that the new AI, common AI, convolutive neural networks and deep tech is supposed to be supposed to be agnostic, free from any domain, but it's not the case. In fact, to be a good champion, maybe, AI developer or a company, you need to also, apart from exact sciences like mathematics and things like that, statistics, to also are profoundly, deeply aware of human and social sciences. Very important. And maybe that's a difference in between, we'll come back to that, the Indian ecosystem, which is a little bit late on that understanding, I think. When we think about leveraging AI, we forget a little bit the ground of human and social sciences, which is there. This is maybe the first idea, simple, I would like to put forward. I moved to Bangalore recently, in October 2023, as a delegate of the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs to cooperate, as you said, as a fellow of the Indian stack, the Indian think tank, iSpirit Foundation. working on several Indian projects dealing with digital public infrastructure and artificial intelligence regulation. Digital public infrastructure is very important for India. It's a very good and very important idea. I will have, maybe it's my second proposal to consider DPI as very interesting things. Of course, you know DPI because you already have those ADA and UPI systems, but if, let's put it that way, if we could, through digital empowerment, protection architectures, deal with data exchange as, let's say, the next layer of India stack, for example, and then maybe if we could deal with deep tech, that's to say, dealing with big data exchange over there, and if it could be techno-legal natively, if you could provide, for example, open source, enabling people, public and private partners to invent new applications, to innovate, but being radically natively compliant to, let's say, the law, for example, concerning privacy and so on, it could be a very good idea, very unique in the world. I'll come back on that. Maybe a second idea. But the same remark again applies here. DPI are socio-technical systems, environment, systems of systems, even political, legal, socio-technical environment. Their vocation, as I said, is to inspire innovative, that means sometimes subversive applications. So it's very difficult to specify innovation. That's a great problem with that DPI idea. But there must be techno-legal, as I said, allowing developments natively compatible with applicable law concerning, for example, privacy. But also sufficiently attractive to bring together different public and private actors, makers, users around some common large objectives, which typically constitutes a political, social challenge. So that's something very interesting. And in India, just give me 1 second more. In India now, you cannot imagine that the whole world is now looking to India regarding that DPI proposals. As you said, I was recently, for example, in the United Nations with iSpirit, and the nations were very interested, sometimes fascinating, not only from the global south, but also from north and occidental countries, because that could be a difference made by India in between, let's say, the US approach of AI regulation, the European one, we talk about it, the European one has a tendency to, of course, to save a law, but there's not enough tools to implement that law for developers. And of course, the Chinese approach is also different. So India could lead, and it is now leading, a very interesting movement that could make the difference as far as AI regulation is concerned. And just to finish, 3 ideas, I will limit myself to that. The third one is also very simple. The name of a previous session was Making Intelligent Use of Intelligent Technologies. So we are also waiting for India to work, probably both locally and globally, on, let's say, important subjects like, I don't want to list them, you know them by heart, sustainable development and agriculture, waste management, fights against climate change, and so on. If India doesn't address singularly with its own genius those problems with innovative applications, it would be difficult to become AI champions in the world. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You know, that mixing the element of the human and also slicing it down. So if I was to draw a few points, I would say tech for power. So somebody is using tech to get power, and somebody is using tech to empower. So hopefully DPI thinking or digital public infrastructure thinking can empower with tech. And it's interesting when you look at Europe, the model is the GDPR model, the General Data Protection. And in India, it's DEPA, Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture, where, like I said, the previous example, the auto driver can go, normally in Uber, it's not possible that he can share his data of how much money he makes with the bank. But with the protocol, because of India's DPI, which is called Beacon Protocol, he can share a link with the bank, and the bank can see for the last 24 months, every minute, how much money this auto driver made. And using AI model can empower him to access credit at a reasonable rate, otherwise he gets credit at a very bad rate. That's why some people complain why this auto driver is asking double, right? Or sometimes you say the vegetable vendor is asking double the money, right? It's not because they are greedy, it's also because they have to pay a money lender from whom they borrowed. So hopefully DPIs in the global south will help to empower people. And it's also possible that these DPIs could be used to overpower people, which is also happening in some parts of the world. I don't want to go there, but it's really interesting. Thank you, Francois, for laying that out. And we have to be careful and how law is applied to tech, right? So it's really interesting to see how that evolves. So now we go completely to another side and another perspective. I would like to welcome Krish Ashok, Global Head of Consulting for AI.Cloud at Tata Consulting, for his views on what could be the quantum leap that Gen AI and all the other versions around that could bring to corporations in India to push the overall innovation index, because in the end, that's what is key. So over to you.
So I think I want to start on a lighter note by saying that, see, AI is one of those game-changing technologies that comes around, every few decades in human history that is truly transformational. I mean, we're on a S-curve, is like really, really steep rate of adoption, right? I mean, it's when the iPhone came out, for the first 1 or 2 years, a very tiny percentage of the population could actually afford it. But 300 million people using ChatGPT is something else, right? And clearly everybody kind of sees in their personal lives that this is, beyond obviously kids cheating at homework, which really should be a question for schools on how homework should be defined. We're clearly in a phase of a technology that has tremendous promise, right? At the same time, on a lighter note, we also know as people working in large corporations that, machine learning is written in Python, okay? AI is written in PowerPoint. So there's an insane amount of hype, right? And it's sort of self-serving and self-amplifying, right? Everybody on LinkedIn, all of a sudden, many of my colleagues, suddenly their grammar seems to have improved because they clearly are taking the help of, ChatGPT, right? Not only that, everybody is like, we did something on Gen AI, we did something on then board members and everyone is like, what are we doing? We should also do something, right? So there's billions of dollars being plowed into this. And what we've seen for the last 1 year, having done about 300 or 400 implementations, is that less than 10% of Gen AI implementations in large companies eventually scale and deliver value right now. It's going to change. For sure it will change because people will figure out that there is more to solving a work problem than throwing a large language model at it. It's a little bit more nuanced, right? So, but this is again an exponential technology. 1 year now, we'll be speaking about entirely different problems. But that said, so what we decided to do is to sort of step back and think about AI fundamentally democratizes, this generation of AI democratizes knowledge work. See, we've had democratization of energy, with steam engine and all of that. We had democratization of travel, with global shipping and aviation and so on, right? We had democratization of communication, with mobile and internet and so on. And scale with cloud, right? Two people sitting in a garage could build $1 billion company and so on. This generation of AI is the democratization of knowledge work itself, of skills, right? So what that essentially means is that historically, if you take a large company, most people focused on how to do work. That was the most important. So we call this the imperative, right? Meaning that you had to know how to maybe specifically build a part. You had to specifically know how to do analytics. Maximum, maybe you had a calculator and so on, right? And with the last century, we've had tools like the computer, we've had tools like Excel and all these things, increasingly allow you to kind of move up the value chain where you don't necessarily know how a pivot table works, but you can just simply use Excel to do it for you, right? Now, the interesting shift with Gen AI now is that it changes a lot of work from the how to the what, which is declarative, right? Meaning that increasingly over the next 1 or 2 years, already, people describe what they want, a copilot generates code, right? I mean, you describe what you want and you get an essay. You describe a picture, you get an image. Pretty soon you describe a video and you get a video and so on. So the declarative part, right? Which means that more and more work and job roles will have to become more declarative. Historically, only managers did that. More people will have to do that, which therefore frees up more people within your organization to think about the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because that's the epistemic, right? So epistemic, declarative and imperative, right? So only when you think about why do you think about innovation. Because if you're only doing the how and the what, you're doing BAU. You want innovation, you got to question, you got to challenge, you got to think about the why. And that, I think, is the lens through which companies have to see AI. Today, there's a lot of focus on the technology, right? We're worried about, which model, token cost, we're worried about vector DBs, we're worried about a whole range of other things today. And yes, the engineering will get better. The likes of Microsoft and others will keep making it easier and easier for you to build these things. But unless you shift your focus away from the technology to the fundamental nature of what people are doing, you won't truly embrace what AI can do for you. And that's where Indian companies have an opportunity, because we have less legacy processes, mindsets, thinking, technology. It's much easier, right? I mean, you described UPI. We were able to leapfrog the West because we did not have to worry about a huge network of ATMs and, traditional credit cards and other transactions. We were able to just completely leapfrog. I think this presents an opportunity for companies to truly change the fundamental nature of work. And that, I think, is the opportunity here.
Thank you for that wonderful summary. The why becomes more important than the what, and also the why becomes more important than the who. These are really excellent underpinnings to have as one thinks of what value they can unlock with AI. And it's this interesting jugalbandi between the human mind, answering the why, and using AI to find the way along the way. And that's really interesting. So, wow, thank you so much for that interesting perspective. But it's also pertinent to note, like, he pointed out that only about 10% actual impact is seen as of now, which could change drastically in the coming months, coming quarters. But it's a space to watch.
Absolutely.
All right. Now we jump over to our friend and CTO from Microsoft, CTO-in-Residence, Vinayak Hegde, who is part of the Microsoft team for startups. And I want him to cover multiple aspects, probably, as the opening shot, right? One is, as startups, a sector, if they are deciding to deploy AI and AI tools, what should be the key things they have to be careful about, how can they not, get sued for the wrong things and so on. So what could be the guardrails that they keep in mind? The second, if you can give us some tips on how to create an AI roadmap so that they can serve their customer the best, the fastest possible way, and at the lowest unit cost, which means their margins are better. And any other point that you want to add into that mix so that our audience really benefits from staying back for the last session.
Can you hear me all right? Yeah. So I'll just, before I kind of introduce myself and go into them, I just wanted to address one thing I think which Krish said, right? Like technology diffusion. We are at the very early stages of technology diffusion, right? Now, I may point out that Krish, me and Francis are all wearing spectacles. But at some point of time, spectacles were technology, right? So if you think about what we consider as technology, right? The wheel was technology once, the printing press was technology once. So my framework for that is, if something was invented before you were born, or when you are young, it probably doesn't count as technology, right? So for example, for my kid, internet is not technology, but for me it is. Right? That is where I think the generational difference. So while we are at the beginnings of AI, I think everything will have AI or machine learning as one of the counterparts. So quick introduction about myself, and then I'll go into how do we kind of map the landscape. I have been an entrepreneur. I have been part of company that got acquired. I have been a CTO of a company that was that listed on the Nasdaq, and I've also been an investor. So I've kind of done the full circle. And as several panelists earlier said, I've done the 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100 journey. So that's kind of my background. I have been building AI systems also in various aspects. Whether it was like mapping out like cities and figuring out where the hotspots are, for certain demands, or automating some of the responses that you could do, in a CRM. So that's kind of my background as a technology. So coming back to the question, I would say that how you look through AI companies, and I'll also explain how that relates to India. So the three specific aspects, if you look from a horizontal perspective, that you look at AI companies. The first one is the people who are building the models. So there is, for example, there's OpenAI, there's Anthropic, there's also Desi, which is Israeli company. So there are multiple such companies. There's also Sarvam in India that also is building models. So that is like maybe like the toughest and part of AI is like building the model and having that technology. The second part is people who build the tools to make use of this technology. The people who are in some sense providing the orchestration layer, or to use this technology or these models, generate those models, use those models, use this technology. For example, LangChain, Llama Index, Snorkel AI. So there are a bunch of these companies that are actually helping you use these models. And I think if you are actually using things locally when you try out a model or on the internet, you will probably go through some of these tool companies. And the third and the biggest part, I would say, is AI applications, right? And that is where I think India has historically been strong at. So that is a layer in which like you have a domain, and I think Kalyan Sivaselam was here earlier from FICE Network. They are actually using AI in healthcare to make the job of radiologists easier. People are using it in mapping technologies to detect certain patches of land with certain features. So these are all applications. So the lowermost part is I think where India is strong at, but also again, like, this is a very wide base, like it's like a pyramid. So at the top you have the model makers, then you have the AI tools, and then finally you have this huge number of applications that are there. So the applications layer is where India is strong at, and also I think again you look at vertical by vertical, right? So because AI, as I think Krish was also saying, is not just the technology, but there is a huge amount of domain knowledge that is required to build any of these tools, because you can't take a generic model and just use it. At least that is not how I am seeing both enterprises and startup use. There has to be some kind of in technical language called fine tuning, or there are various techniques such as retrieval augmented generation, right? I don't want to get into the technical aspects to use actually a technology in application. That is where I think India has been strong at. But the important thing I want to make a point, and I was talking to Juice earlier about this, is how to do this in a way that reduces harm, or reduces, I would say, hallucinations. All of us have seen like very weird responses whenever you're using tool, and you will also see, especially like, I was talking to an education startup, and it was very funny because they were doing this trial with kids, and they had this application which was tuned for a education use case, and you give it a word problem and then it would it would solve it, but many times it would get it wrong because it would not understand the underlying mathematics, right? Because at its very core, most of what we call generative AI is like large language models, so it would just predict the next token. So it is not built for that purpose. But it was so funny to actually see it actually defending that. It is actually arguing with your kid, and it's actually trying to convince me that its answer is wrong, even though I know the answer is right, right? So the human in the loop actually becomes really, really important in such cases. So what are the mechanisms for redressal? That is, I think, something that needs to be thought of. So when you're building systems, you need to think about that aspect about, if like people say, hey, what, this will actually make people productive, but even if you have to judge the output, you need to have some kind of inherent capability and domain knowledge to be able to judge the output, either in the form of guardrails or the person who's actually using the model. So I'll quickly talk about a few principles, and I'll stop at that because we can explore it later as we go on. So there are 4 or 5 principles that you use when you use model. You can call it FATTER, or like FAT, which is fairness, accountable, transparent, and then it should also be explainable and reproducible, right? I think most of AI today also, while there is a lot of hype, is plagued with problems where the research itself is not either explainable or reproducible. And especially in very high risk areas such as insurance or in the case of healthcare, getting it wrong actually can have very devastating consequences. So I think that is, I would say, like, something that we should actually keep in mind, and one of the frameworks is like, like FAT, which is what is known as FATML or FATTER, to be able to actually build some of this model. So I hope that this would actually give you a framework to, one, think about the startup ecosystem, or rather not just startup ecosystem, look at the entire landscape and how kind of maybe India relates to it, which is the bottom. And we can talk about the bottom layer a lot more because that is where all of the action is.
Perfect. I think that was really very well laid out, especially with that framework. And it's important for startup founders also to be aware that hallucination as of now exists. Maybe in the future it might not. The way the AI model evolves or is made better, but till then, because they have a real customer on the other side, they need to have systems and frameworks to make their value proposition reliable, safe, and profitable in that sense. All right, so with that first round, we will now open for questions, comments, or value propositions from the audience. So let's start with Madan from your story. Yes. Also introduce yourself with a line. I know you, but others need to know.
Thanks. Madan from your story. A big requirement for success in AI is companies should have multidisciplinary skills. So tech, design, creativity, ethics, and whatnot. So
Yes.
I'd like each of you to maybe give some examples of how companies are successfully putting all this together, either with individuals or with different groups. And I want you to begin that, Krish, because you, in addition to doing AI.Cloud at TCS,
Yes.
he's also the author of a bestseller called The Masala Lab, How to Deconstruct Indian Cooking. So cooking and cloud is 2 completely different skill sets, mindsets maybe. So how do you or companies do this kind of stuff?
Sure. So I'll sort of take that.
Once again, he's asking you the recipe for success.
No, that's right. So actually, the key to writing Masala Lab and also managing a close to 1 million social media following is actually AI that we'll get to later. Right? So there is more commonality than you think, right? Masala Lab was written by me scraping 200,000 recipes from the internet and doing data science on it, right? And looking for patterns and so on. So in that sense, I think software has always been a meta skill that allows you to apply computation to as many problems as you can, right? And I think it's just a maturity of where that software stack is, whether it is just pure software or software and data, and then now obviously machine learning models. And so now we have like large language models, which allows you to understand human language, right? Which kind of brings me to this point about your point about generalization, right? One of the things we inside TCS have been thinking about is that most job roles exist in a spectrum of specialization and generalization, right? So you begin your career by being neither. You're neither a generalist nor a specialist, right? I mean, you have to learn, right? So an entry-level developer then becomes a senior developer after doing a couple of projects. That person becomes more of a specialist, right? But at some point of time, some people might then say, you know what, I'm going to step back and look at patterns across projects, and then I become an architect. That is more of a generalist role, right? So if you really take extremes, sales and HR and operations tend to be generalist roles. Deep, hardcore specialists, brain surgeon, people who are like chartered accountants, they are specialists, right? So what we now believe is that people plus democratic access to AI and democratic access to knowledge, right, will now have the opportunity to become creative generalists. Meaning that I'm both a specialist and a generalist based on the problem that I need, because I can use AI to assist me in either having access to generalized tacit knowledge or to really use computation as a way of doing something faster, better, cheaper, and so on, right? So underwriter, computational underwriter, well, it's a different skill, right? Biologists used to take decades to come up with drugs, and biochemists. Software engineers with a grounding in biology are able to come up with drugs using models in months and weeks, right? So that's a computational biologist. So in that sense, I think every company has to start thinking about what these creative generalist roles are and how they fit into your organization. Let's be clear, most large companies are not designed for creative generalists. Startups are designed for creative generalists, but large companies are not, right? So some amount of reimagination of how you are structured, how these roles are encouraged, etc., is also kind of important. And as I said, I think one of the weird things about generative AI is that it also is going to result in the democratization of traditional AI, which, by the way, right, traditional AI is hard, but gets the job done, right? I mean, it solves the problem narrowly but accurately, but it's very hard. You needed a data scientist and so on. But now, relatively less experienced people can use Gen AI to generate code for predictive AI, and you can therefore now write more software, do more traditional AI, do more analytics. So it democratizes that as well, right? So that also is an opportunity. Like one of the things that helped me write my book and also do a lot of the stuff that I do, I have my own GPT assistants that help with research, fact checking, and script writing, and so on. I don't use like an agency, so it's just me and a bunch of AI agents actually, right? So in that sense, I think everybody will find that human plus AI that allows them to be multidisciplinary, and so on. So that's at least my point of view. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I would only half-jokingly say a recipe for success, especially for startups, is GPUs. Because again, I said half-jokingly because I think there is a shortage of that. But realistically, I think the startups or the companies that I'm seeing succeeding are the ones who have an unfair advantage. That unfair advantage can have several dimensions. One dimension is that they have an excellent team with experts in a specific area. Right? So I think if you look at the top of the pyramid, where I said, like at the top, I think that is the most unfair advantage. If you look at, as you go towards the bottom, you'll see that domain knowledge actually becomes really useful, because you need to understand the domain and how to apply it, right? Like using the, extending what we said, the creative generalist, right? How do you build those tools, and how do you make it part of your workflow, right? Like whether you're a radiologist or a doctor, right? Can you build like a co-pilot or an assistant where the human can constantly interact, right? That's why I gave this example, which all of us don't see as technology, is his glasses. It can help me read, it can help me see far, depending on whether I have far-sightedness or close-sightedness. AI will also do that. I can't have the world's knowledge stored in my brain. So in some sense, I'm giving you access. AI is giving you that access to that fount of human knowledge that is actually captured in a way that is very accessible, in a very declarative way, which was not earlier possible, right? So I would say either team. I think team is probably the most important thing. The second thing I would say is domain knowledge, and finding those use cases. In some cases, which we were talking in the earlier panel about category creation that we have not even thought of. Right? For example, when social media came earlier, nobody was thinking that it would have that would lead to the creation of creator economy. But so we'll see those kind of things happen with AI as well. So yeah, it will definitely make people productive, and we are slowly but surely moving towards like becoming in some sense like a cyborg, right? And to some extent we are, because if you look at lenses, we are actually using technology which is part of us. People who have pacemakers in the heart are using that. So AI will in some sense become like a second brain to a lot of us.
What I think is the more interesting aspect of AI is that it's done to help people thinking. It was absolutely the case, explicitly the case with traditional AI. And it is still the case with that disruptive AI we faced with for a very few moments. And so it's very good in some way. if people are involved into that kind of discussion, there is a need for popularization, for inclusion, capacity of criticism, and it's very good if people think about their commons and also their digital commons at many levels, different levels, not only the state government level we mentioned as when we talk about DPI. But the word knowledge has been pronounced many times here, and we have to be aware that that new AI we have faced is problematic as far as knowledge is concerned, because AI doesn't anymore produce knowledge. In that sense that we were used to have some, let's say, model, not in the sense of AI model as you speak, but just some representation, and the difference between our experience and our models, human models we developed, was absolutely centered in the way, for example, we develop knowledge, including science develop knowledge. If you haven't got any theory, you cannot progress in any knowledge. Or, it's very interesting to consider that now AI doesn't need model anymore, considering that many examples could be, let's say, an extensive abstract model by itself. So we can, of course, imagine that with that, we can mine for a certain time many interesting things, but it will end quite shortly, because shortly the question will be about knowledge. What is now the knowledge we develop? If an AI system is entering a debate into a health decision, and if he's right, saying, for example, this person has to do something, it's very interesting, but it doesn't do anything for oncology. We don't understand how to turn that into progress in some knowledge. And it will be, of course, the main challenge, and it will come to I think very quickly, a question of acceptability of AI. And of course, there are some solutions working on explainability of our AI systems, but this will be probably something very interesting that will come soon, and it relies on knowledge. So what is knowledge? And it's very interesting to involve people about thinking about it. What is knowledge? And everybody has to think. And the best investment to do now with AI is to discuss it with many people at many different levels, and to engage people to build their own digital commons, I should say. That will be the great progress of AI now. Because for the rest, yeah, there are some challenges, very important challenges. I don't know if you agree, but they will come soon.
Interesting, Francis. So now, if I have to say, it's a shifting ground. Sometimes the ground is shifting faster than you can grasp. Sometimes you can grasp what you want, and sometimes you have to, reach out to some other place to grasp what you want. So, I mean, on a lighter note, before the next question, they say you need money to make more money. Now we just found out you need AI to create more narrow AI. All right.
Yeah.
It's a world in a loop. Yes.
Before that, one light point about, since he likes the metaphor of the glasses as being, technology and so on. I want to tell that other gentleman that the next time around I'm here, I'll get my Ray-Ban smart glasses, and you won't know because it can listen to what you're asking and then whisper the answer in my ear by hitting the LLM, right? So, like people writing posts on LinkedIn, even panel discussions, people will probably be using AI just directly from just wearing the glasses on their head, right? I mean, yes, that's the augmented panelist, if you will. Yes, sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is Saurabh Gaur. I am an associate director with Tata Digital. So my question is an extension of your this answer. See, AI and ML as a technology is a very horizontal in nature, and it cuts across a lot of functions. The impact right now, it's very visible on digital skills like content creation, image, video, so on and so forth. But let's say it advances in 5 years, there is a robot with an AI ML which can, let's say, cook better. So Currently, my wife is a better cook than me, and I know only how to boil a water. But after 5 years, let's say I become a cook. So, question: is AI ML is risk to creativity and let's say originality, or it will redefine the creativity and originality itself and evolve into something else? Like you said, like all the LinkedIn posts are looking same. What differentiates people or originality becomes the question.
See, I think sometimes terms like originality are very abstract and people don't think about it hard enough, right? I think a painter painting is also getting inspired by things he is seeing in the real world, right? To some degree, if you assume your brain is a neural network that is being trained on the light that is hitting it, right? So there are analogies to a model being trained on a billion images, indexed by the internet and so on. So creativity has always never been on a blank slate. It's always been about building on top of existing knowledge and other people and collaboration, right? All scientific progress is built on other people's scientific progress. So in that sense, it will simply get turbocharged, right? In the sense that more people will have access to more knowledge to build on and do small incremental amounts of creativity. That's essentially how this is going to get defined. And I think on a philosophical note also, see, I think to your point about AI ML and where it's helping with create certain kinds of writing and image generation and so on. That is today. That's because of the nature of the transformer architecture being used to do these things. So if you see the improvements right now, if you see right now, to his point, if you ask a math question 1 year ago, it'll come up with a hilariously wrong answer and a hilariously wrong reasoning for the answer also, right? But now what it does, more often than not, the moment there are numbers, it writes Python code and lets that solve the problem. So this again is a incremental improvement over where the LLM outsources certain kinds of activities to other agents, right? In this case, like software code that you write. Pretty soon, you will have multi-agent systems that will unlock a lot more problem-solving capability, very creative interdisciplinary problem-solving capability. So in my opinion, I think this is really just about a redefinition of what originality and what all of these things mean.
Quickly to add to that, I think before we go on to the next question, I think technology should be seen as an amplifier, right? Again, like I'm a student of history, so I'll again dig into history, right? Earlier, I think people, when like, maybe 30, 40,000 years ago, I think when civilization started, man started settling down, people still had fights, but to counter the person, either you could argue verbally or hit the person with a club. Then people became a little smarter, right? Because if you hit somebody with a club, you need proximity. They started with bow and arrow. That became technology. And now we have exceeded to that point where, you don't even, like the person operating the drone does not even see who the person is killing, right? So technology has a huge impact, right? So it has basically, if you see from one lens, it is just amplifying what is already there, right? So it's not as if technology is good or evil, right? And people try to kind of make it in a Manichean or a binary world. Yeah, so that's one thing I kind of wanted to say. It is like, think of it as an amplifier and see what you can amplify, what you can do. And again, creativity, like if you ask any singer, if you ask any artist, what they will tell you that what they are inspired by, right? So there is some amount of input. We always build on the work of others. Obviously, I think the legal frameworks and other things have to be sorted out, right? Like the good example was Scarlett Johansson's voice being used. So those things have, as a society, we have to figure those things out. But it is very debatable today whether like AI is creative, right? Like one of the things that I demo when I do, like my job is also to demo technology to people and show them the possibilities. I make them whenever I'm visiting a city, I make ChatGPT write a poem about the city, and it not only does a good job rhyming and make it funny, but it also does a good job understanding, what are the different landmarks of the city, what is unique to the city. For example, if I make it write a poem about Bangalore, it will talk about the traffic jams, it will talk about flooding, but it will also talk about the huge amount of maybe trees that we have relative to other Indian cities. I know Bangaloreans have their peoples. If I talk about Hyderabad, it understands that, it was where the Nizams ruled. There is Charminar there. Similarly, other cities. So essentially it is kind of mimicking what it is seeing, right? Like, and that is also in some sense human behavior. If you see how kids also learn, they learn by maybe mimicking their parents. And like this very funny saying, right? Somebody was talking about a grandfather and son. So I keep on telling, right? By the time I agreed with my father, I already had a son who disagreed with me. And I think technology also will kind of follow that, right? It will be a sidekick, but also that will change our interactions with ourselves, with others. Again, the reason I talked about responsibility is how do we build a guardrail so it doesn't go off the rails. And those are the things that those discussions are very nascent, because as I said, like we are at very beginnings of what this kind of technology can do to us.
So excellent. I just wanted to make it a little more interesting. Somebody asked a question: who was the first scientist in the world? It's an interesting question, right? And interestingly, the answer is it was a child, because the one who asks a question is the scientist. So suddenly, with AI and the breadth and depth with which it's encapsulating all of the economy, all of society, the more important thing will be what questions do we ask. Like he said, AI could use another AI program and further nest another AI program to find a drill down level of answer as we go from this version to the next to the next. But the key thing is, what question do you ask that AI? Do you just say make a painting or make a poem, which is also nice, but could you ask something more? And this will be an interesting jugalbandi, let's say a dance of reaction and action between the human mind and AI. All right, so we need another question from this side. Okay. Oh, the hands are going faster. All right. One line of introduction, who you are, and then yes.
Hi, this is Kishore here from Ashok Labs. It's a cybersecurity research service and training company. Are we prepared?
Little louder.
Yeah. Are we prepared for the challenges? What if AI goes rogue? Number one. Number two, what if the data set is poisoned? Number three, are we prepared to respond to these challenges? Because there are some time critical operations that AI is involved in.
Good question. Who wants to start? Yeah.
Exactly.
So he said if AI sets go rogue, and it's poison the data sets or the algorithm and it goes crazy.
Yeah. He's asking whether are we prepared if AI goes rogue? I mean, given the scale and the poison data sets.
Thank you. You start and then.
Yes, we are prepared. About creativity, just because it's part of the answer. The good news is that creativity itself is now studied through AI interest. So creativity as a notion is now very well investigated thanks to AI programs. So yes, I don't know if we are prepared, but we have to prepare. And as I said, to prepare ourselves first to be more, to increase our inclusion, to discuss all together is first step. We cannot lay people without being part of that discussion. So preparation is first to me to enlarge the discussion. It's maybe the more important things we could do now. And that's one of the advantages of such an event, for example, but it has to be spread. For example, tomorrow I will participate to an event with an artist and we'll talk with different people about those questions of AI, but we have to discuss with people. I think it's the best way to prepare. Everybody has to think, to consider. It's a great opportunity of exchanging ideas.
Okay, the answer means there's an ecosystem that has to do it together.
No, plus, we've never been prepared for disruptive technologies in the history of mankind, right? Every time there's a new disruptive technology, disruption does happen, right? I'm sure the first tribes that managed to discover fire probably had a disproportionately destructive impact on ecosystems as well as other tribes, right, and other species and so on. Like humans have had such a destructive effect because of humans plus technology on literally everything else in the ecosystem, right? Most other animals have become extinct because of us. That said, if you look at the people, intellectuals used to say the printing press signaled the death of a civilization. People said that. They said music will disappear because radio was invented. People said kids will become dumb because when TV was invented. People said society will become antisocial because internet and social media was invented. So there is, I think we're never going to be prepared, but there are always going to be negative consequences. For sure, you're going to start to see some things go wrong, right? Autonomous cars have already killed a few people, far less than the number of human beings who drink and drive and kill people, right? So you always have to look at it from the point of view of what is the net amount of risk in terms of humans doing it at this point, right? How many mistakes do surgeons make every year? So will an augmented surgeon plus robot make fewer mistakes, right? And to his point, where is the human in the loop, right? And where is that accountability lie? And these are all part of the design questions that we have to answer so that, we build these systems responsibly.
Yeah, I think I'll come back to the first question, I think, which Madan Mohan asked, right? What could be, I would say, unfair advantage? Unfair advantage could be, I haven't seen a large cases other than the team and maybe some of the resources also design. How do you design? And also you have to figure out what is the impact, right? For example, cars, when they came out, they did not have airbags, right? We figured that problem out. So thing is, there will be bad consequences. Some people will suffer, and it happens with every kind of technology. Like if you read the history of nuclear technology, a lot of people who handled those radioactive materials, they were still investigating the radioactive materials, and a lot of them died with cancer. Now we know post facto that was the reason. In fact, if you go to some of the museums, you'll see that uranium was used in a lot of glass, and people used to eat in those vessels which were like radioactive. You can see in many of the museums. So I think AI can go rogue and will go rogue, but we have to figure out a way. And this has been, and we might think, oh, we are special, our generation is special, but no. I mean, again, going back in history, fire, when it was invented, was dangerous, right? It could scald you, it could burn houses down, but we have figured out to a great extent. I mean, there are still challenges with fire, right? We still have fire, but to a great extent, we have figured out how to control fire, right? So when you look at different technology from that lens, there will be mishaps, but there will also be guardrails. And I think we are still quite a bit far away from robots, autonomous robots shooting laser through the eyes. I mean, it's great as a sci-fi trope, but I think still far away, I think, and there will be guardrails, is what I feel.
All right. On that note, I think we will close the last panel because it was really nice to have you. I just want to add one interesting note. Without risk, there is no value for reward. And therefore, what we have to aim to do is AI plus people, not to accumulate power, but to empower so that the world that is in the future, what we leave for our children, will be a better world. Thank you very much. Let's give a big round of applause to all of